She knelt on the ground begging me to remarry her. I stared at the scar on the back of her neck, the one Arthur Sterling had caused years ago. Do you know how you lost your uterus? I kicked away her hand, which was clutching my pant leg. When you were messing around naked with him, in that thermal spa, my hand didn't even tremble as I signed the consent form for your uterus removal. My wife, who practiced long-term abstinence, went to a thermal spa naked with a male real estate agent. While they were at the thermal spa, they got into a conflict with someone and ended up in the hospital. When I rushed to the hospital, the doctor said my wife had sustained injuries to her uterus. It was either a 700,000 yuan conservative surgery or a complete hysterectomy. I didn't hesitate. I chose the uterus removal. When my wife woke up, however, she cried and threw a tantrum, clutching at me and demanding to know why I had deprived her of the right to be a mother. I disgustedly shoved her to the ground. What's wrong with you? Aren't you usually disgusted by my touch? Besides, you're someone who never accepts intimacy. Why would you want a child? When I arrived at the hospital, the operating room light was still on. Doctor, how is my wife now? I feigned a few tears, but inside, I felt a secret delight. 3 days prior, my wife had said she was going on vacation to a thermal spa. The next message I received from her, however, was that she had been beaten and admitted to the hospital. As her husband, I was notified immediately, took leave from work, and rushed to the hospital. The doctor saw me, looked me up and down, then frowned, and spoke. Are you Victoria Sterling's family? She has a ruptured corpus luteum, affecting her fallopian tube and uterus. Repairing it will cost 700,000 yuan. Otherwise, it will require a complete hysterectomy. Ruptured corpus luteum. I widened my eyes, feigning disbelief. Doctor, are you mistaken? Can getting beaten up damage that part of the body? My wife just went to a thermal spa. She was attacked by a group of bad people. Everyone nearby looked over. When they heard my voice, the doctor also looked at me, a complex expression on their face. Do you know what she was doing when she was beaten up for being the other woman? What could she have been doing? My wife is known for her long-term abstinence. I wasn't lying. Aside from our first day of marriage, Victoria Sterling had never allowed me to touch her again. Any slight reaction from me would lead to her scolding me, calling me a pervert, a scoundrel, or shameless. As a dependent live-in husband, I was utterly obedient to my wife after marriage. My wife is so committed to long-term abstinence. How could she possibly have been doing when she was attacked? The doctor looked at me with a hint of pity and patted my shoulder. All right, make a decision quickly. I had no choice but to step aside and make a phone call. 700,000 yuan. That's ridiculous. After moving in with the Sterling family, my bank account was completely taken away. Every month, Victoria Sterling only gave me a 300 yuan allowance. With so little money, I couldn't hold my head up at the workplace for department team building events. I always found excuses to decline and never dared to participate. When colleagues got married, I'd force a smile and wish them a happy family, but I never gave any cash gifts. At the baby celebration party for my boss child, I was the only one who showed up empty-handed to offer congratulations. My boss directly told me not to come again. Everyone mocked me, calling me a henpecked husband. Behind my back, they looked down on me even more, saying they'd never seen a man more useless than me. Now they want me to come up with 700,000 yuan. It would be simpler to ask for my life. The call connected quickly, and Arthur Sterling's impatient voice came through. Why are you bothering me if nothing's wrong? Dad, do you know where Victoria has her money? She's in the hospital now and needs 700,000 yuan for surgery. Arthur Sterling, however, suddenly erupted in fury. Ethan Chern, are you out of your mind? 700,000 yuan for a medical treatment. Trying to swindle me. Get lost. The phone slammed shut. The doctor next to me shook their head helplessly. Family member, you need to make a decision as soon as possible, no matter what. I looked towards the operating room, my eyes involuntarily reddening. Doctor, can we wait a little longer? I'll mortgage a house to raise the money. As I said this, I started to kneel, but the doctor quickly helped me up. Everyone in the operating room is waiting. Time is of the essence. I wiped away my tears, my voice trembling. That 700,000 yuan, even mortgaging a house takes time. I finally sighed, looking at the doctor with difficulty. There's really no other way. I am useless, not worthy of Victoria having children. If it's a complete hysterectomy, then let's do it. The doctor nodded, and after I signed, they returned to the operating room, watching the doctor leave. The corners of my mouth curled upwards slightly. Just then, a nurse walked over, seemingly wanting to say something but hesitating. "Sir, do you know who the man brought in with your wife is? They weren't wearing any clothes when they were brought in, and they were inseparable. Your number was given by your wife before she lost consciousness. The man passed out first." I slumped into a chair, feigning a look of shock. "What do you mean, not wearing any clothes?" The nurse didn't say more, her eyes full of sympathy, as if suddenly remembering something. I bitterly smiled, and took out my phone. I scrolled to the top photo that the real estate agent had posted on his social media. The photo showed my wife and the male agent leaning intimately against each other, looking very much like a loving couple. "Is this him?" I pointed to the male real estate agent, Kyle Miller. "Not long ago, my wife and Arthur Sterling wanted to get a new house, so I added this real estate agent, but I didn't chat with him much. My wife handled all the communication. Gradually, my wife started appearing in his social media posts. When viewing unfinished houses, they would occasionally put an arm around each other's waist or shoulder. Their behavior grew bolder and more suggestive. When I asked about it, my wife would get angry, accusing me of being suspicious and petty. Because of this, I dared not say anything else, and even liked every one of his social media posts. The nurse looked at that social media post, and saw my likes, and the blessing comments below, making her hesitate to speak. Her gaze softened with even more pity, and she nodded slightly. I gave a bitter laugh, and without waiting for her reply, dialed another number. "I understand. I'll inform his family right away." After 5 hours of rescue efforts, Victoria Sterling was out of danger. Kyle Miller was still in resuscitation, but she was moved to a hospital room first. I stayed by Victoria Sterling's side until she woke up. I expected her to say something, but she remained silent. She looked at me with disdain, as if my serving her was only natural. I had long grown accustomed to her condescending attitude. Soon after, Arthur Sterling burst in furiously. "Ethan Churn, you scoundrel, are you deliberately trying to kill my daughter? You didn't even inform me of such a big matter. What's the point of keeping a dog like you around?" His enraged roar echoed from far down the hallway. Bang! Just as I turned my head, Arthur Sterling's cane smashed heavily onto my head. I clenched my teeth against the pain, a flicker of hatred in my eyes. He swung his cane and continued to hit me, putting all his strength into each blow. "You piece of trash! If it weren't for taking you in because of your father, you would have starved to death on the streets. And now you dare to harbor ill intentions to harm my daughter." I instinctively tried to dodge. This movement completely enraged Arthur Sterling. He grabbed my collar, his eyes blazing with malice. "You dare to dodge? You're nothing but a dog raised by the Sterling family. Whatever the Sterling family tells you to do, you must do. You ungrateful wretch, I'll beat you to death today. I am the Sterling family's dependent live-in husband. When I was 12, my father disappeared on his way to a factory fire. However, the media pointed fingers at my father, claiming he deserted. My mother consequently committed suicide by hanging, and I, now an orphan, was eventually adopted by my father's business partner, the Sterling family. As I grew up, I desperately wanted to know what happened to my father. One day, I accidentally overheard a conversation between Arthur Sterling and his employees. They mentioned that my father had left something behind, but they stopped talking when they noticed me. Arthur Sterling told me that my father was still alive and that he was providing him with financial support. He said when the time was right, he would arrange for my father and me to reunite. It just so happened that Victoria Sterling showed some interest in me then, and I seized the opportunity. I willingly joined the Sterling family as a dependent live-in husband. Years of being conditioned had made me subconsciously fear Arthur Sterling and Victoria Sterling, but Victoria Sterling's betrayal was like an escape hatch, making me want to resist. I raised my hand to struggle but caught Victoria Sterling mouthing something. "Don't you want to know about your father anymore?" Seeing that, my resistance instantly ceased. My fists clenched. I silently endured each blow from the cane. Arthur Sterling beat me for a full half hour, and I was trembling all over. A mouthful of fresh blood welled up, and I couldn't help but spit it out. Victoria Sterling scoffed, as if accustomed to it. Other patients screamed in fright at the sight, and medical staff rushed over upon hearing them. Seeing my terrible state, a nurse quickly came forward to help me up. "Quick, send him for examination, don't delay." Just as they were about to leave, Arthur Sterling spoke coldly. Don't bother with him. He's worthless. He won't die. The hospital only cares about making money. Why bother with examinations? That money would be better spent on my daughter's treatment. I clenched my teeth and waved my hand. I am really fine. Thank you. The nurse hesitated, wanting to say more, but in the end, only instructed, if you feel unwell, be sure to say something, you can always find a nurse. I nodded gratefully, watching the medical staff leave. Everyone else in the hospital room kept their heads down, pretending not to see, and the atmosphere was deadly silent. I forced myself to go to the bathroom to clean my wounds and the bloodstains, before I even finished wiping. Victoria Sterling burst in. Why is the head nurse so nice to you? What's your relationship? Are you trying to seduce her? She grabbed my hair and interrogated me, causing me to break out in a cold sweat from the pain. I shook my head, trying to explain. Victoria Sterling became even angrier, violently kicking the back of my knee, and sharply commanded, "Get on your knees." I knelt heavily on the floor, the intense pain in my knees making me gasp. Today, you're going to stay here on your knees and reflect. Then go back and make me some nourishing soup, and send some to Kyle Miller too. If he hadn't arrived in time, I might have been beaten to death by those people. Honestly, what good are you, you useless trash? Victoria Sterling's dismissive words made me couldn't help but sneer. It was clearly a case of being caught cheating, but she was spinning it as Kyle Miller coming to her rescue. How had I never known she was so shameless before? Smack. Another slap landed on my face. What's that expression for? Don't use your dirty thoughts to speculate about me and Kyle Miller. He's my true love. You worthless bastard can't even compare to him, and you have no right to gossip. Victoria Sterling slapped me several times. Clearly provoked by my sneer, I kept my head down, silent, kneeling on the cold floor tiles, my face devoid of any expression. As soon as she heard Kyle Miller had woken up, Victoria Sterling rushed over impatiently. Initially, she was the one eagerly pursuing me. Now, she's desperately clinging to another man. I leaned against the wall and sighed deeply, scoffing at how I had been persecuted to this extent. Laughter and cheerful voices soon drifted from the adjacent hospital room. By this point, they no longer bothered to hide anything from me. Suddenly, I heard Victoria Sterling's startled cry. I instinctively ran over. Worrying about her had surprisingly become a subconscious habit. Before I even entered the door, an ashtray hit my arm. The ashtray broke, and blood immediately gushed out. Who told you to come here? Are you crazy? The ashtray is stained with blood. How am I supposed to smoke now? Victoria Sterling, who was in Kyle Miller's arms, still in his hospital gown, raised a hand and cursed furiously. Victoria Sterling's expression instantly changed. She gave my bleeding arm a cold glance. What are you doing here? Go clean up that ashtray, and don't just randomly come disturb Kyle Miller's rest in the future. You annoy me just by being here. Her caustic tone filled me with rage. I clenched my fists tightly. The pain in my arm hadn't subsided when Kyle Miller spoke again. Since he here, go buy me a bottle of hard liquor. I feel like having a few drinks. He looked at me triumphantly, as if I was some dog he could order around at will. My expression changed instantly, and I subconsciously looked at Victoria Sterling. She impatiently kicked in my direction. What are you standing there for? Do you want us to beg you? I don't have any money on me. A hint of anger crept into my voice. This slight shift in my emotions infuriated Victoria Sterling. If you don't have money, find a way. Didn't I give you 300 yuan every month? Where did you waste it all? You can't even afford a bottle of liquor. If you don't have money, borrow it. If you can't borrow it, sell your blood. Useless. I stared coldly at Victoria Sterling. After a long time, I finally realized she wasn't joking. I sneered and turned to walk out of the hospital room. After forcing myself to calm down, I called a friend to borrow money, knowing it was for liquor. They hesitated for a moment. I happen to have a bottle here. You can use this one for now. I immediately agreed. Okay. As he handed me the liquor, my friend couldn't help but ask, "Man, how much longer are you going to put up with this?" I shook my head, saying nothing. Only soon. Just as I was about to enter the hospital room with the liquor, the conversation inside made me stop. Victoria Sterling had returned and was pathetically fawning over Arthur Sterling. Dad, I want to divorce Ethan Chern. Wait until his family property redevelopment is done, then we'll talk. Arthur Sterling's sinister tone sent chills down my spine. When the time comes, you can divorce him whenever you want. I have plenty of ways to make sure he leaves with nothing. Victoria Sterling, spoiled by him, snorted impatiently upon hearing this. It's annoying. If only he could just die like his useless old man. With a crash, the liquor bottle shattered on the floor. I rushed into the hospital room, my eyes bloodshot for the first time. I tightly squeezed Victoria Sterling's neck. Arthur Sterling tried to stop me, but I kicked him away, tightening my grip. Tell me, what exactly happened that night? Only when I saw Victoria Sterling's face turn purple did I slowly release my hand from her neck. Arthur Sterling and Victoria Sterling stumbled backward, staring at me in terror. I locked the hospital room door behind me and stood in the doorway, my gaze cold. I radiated an aura of ruthlessness, as if I would kill anyone who stood in my way. My first act of defiance terrified them all. They watched in horror as I picked up the glass shards from the floor, approaching them step by step. The shards cut streaks of blood on her arm. She finally broke down and cried hysterically, struggling and screaming. She tried to escape my grip. I let out a cold laugh. Victoria Sterling, do you think I am still that pushover you could manipulate at will? Do you really think I wouldn't dare to lay a hand on you? You were the one who seduced me in the first place. Then once you had me, you despised me and openly cheated on me. I could tolerate all of that, but only on the condition that you didn't know about my father's involvement. Now it seems all my endurance has become a joke. If you don't make it clear what happened back then today, no one is leaving. The glass shards continued to trace lines on her body. Victoria Sterling cried until her voice was hoarse, but I turned a deaf ear. Such scum didn't deserve sympathy. Finally, Victoria Sterling couldn't take it anymore. She fell to her knees, sobbing, "Ethan Chern, please stop, I'll tell you everything." Arthur Sterling, however, enraged and humiliated, rushed over and slapped Victoria Sterling. "Shut up. Are you crazy? Do you want to get me killed?" Ignoring the pain on her face, Victoria Sterling clutched my pant leg, trembling all over. It was my dad. He set the fire back then, and then deliberately submerged the wires in water, killing Uncle. I instantly felt dizzy, a suffocating pain rising in my heart. Arthur Sterling collapsed into a chair, muttering to himself, "It's over, it's all over now." But he quickly composed himself, and glared at me fiercely. "If you dare to lay a finger on me, I'll go to jail. So many years have passed, what evidence do you have to accuse me?" I laughed scornfully. "The law will bring justice to my father. You will both pay for your evil deeds, sooner or later." I turned to Victoria Sterling, whose face was pale. She recoiled in terror, afraid I would go mad again. I revealed a cruel smile. "Do you know why still alive? To save your life. Your uterus has been removed." Victoria Sterling looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. Collapsing to the floor, she frantically tugged at my clothes, screaming hysterically, "No way. How could you do this to me? Without a uterus, what kind of woman am I? You beast." I sneered. "That was your dad's decision. All the family money is in your hands. When I asked your dad for money, he was as wary of me as if I were a thief." Victoria Sterling glanced at Arthur Sterling, and suddenly started smashing things in a frenzy. Arthur Sterling, seeing her blame him, was so enraged he almost slapped her, but Victoria Sterling hit him with a glass cup, and he actually collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Enraged, Victoria Sterling had long lost her sanity. She then lunged at me, tearing and scratching, as if it were all my fault. I disgustedly threw her to the ground. "What's wrong with you? Aren't you usually disgusted by my touch? Besides, is someone who never accepts intimacy. Why would you want a child?" Tears of regret suddenly streamed from Victoria Sterling's eyes, but in the face of my overwhelming strength, she didn't even dare to move. I turned and walked out of the hospital room, my heart filled with gloom. I never expected that after enduring and being drawn into this for half my life, all I would find was a corpse. I would rather my father had truly deserted than accept that I was truly an orphan, and I had even been a dependent live-in husband for the family of his murderer for so many years. Burning with rage, I drove back to the Sterling family home first, simply because I suddenly remembered the Sterling family's private study, which I was strictly forbidden to enter. How ironic. Arthur Sterling claimed to be a Buddhist, yet he had committed so many heinous acts. Pushing open the dusty door, I saw 3 ancestral tablets. The one in the middle, conspicuously, was my father's. Tears streamed uncontrollably from my eyes, and I trembled all over. With a thud, I heavily knelt on the concrete floor. "Dad, I am sorry. Your son has only come to see you after all these years." I knelt for a long time in the cold, damp basement. In this life, I had knelt before Victoria Sterling, before Arthur Sterling, but never before my dearest father. I was going to clear my father's name, which had been unjustly slandered for over a decade. I wanted revenge. I wanted to reclaim everything that was mine, including my money and the factory. A piercing phone ringtone interrupted my thoughts, ringing incessantly like a death knell. Seeing an unknown number, I hung up immediately, but the caller persistently dialed again and again, as if they wouldn't stop until I answered. I irritably answered the phone, only to be met with a barrage of insults. "Who is this?" I asked coldly. I had no need to be polite to such a rude person. The other party sneered. "You abuser, I'll definitely go to hell. Don't let me see you. If I see you once, I'll hit you once. Don't even call the police if you end up in the hospital, just reflect on your actions." I was so enraged I laughed instead. Just as I was about to retort, the call disconnected. Something unusual was happening. I opened my phone to check the news online. Sure enough, I saw Victoria Sterling live streaming online. Before, she didn't work and spent her days live streaming online, gathering quite a few followers. At that moment, she was tearfully accusing me of domestic violence against her and her father, and how I had caused her to lose her fertility. I watched it all coldly. What a performance! I immediately gathered the evidence I had collected earlier, preparing to confront her at the hospital. As I stepped out of the hospital entrance, I was drenched with dirty water. My face darkened as I stared at the crowd gathered around me. "What do you want?" About a dozen people surrounded me, holding various rotten fruit and garbage. "Kill this scumbag. Abuser, get out." In an instant, I was covered in garbage and foul-smelling dirty water. After venting, the group scattered like startled birds, covering their noses as they ran away. I stood rooted to the spot, fuming with rage. "What do you know? This is all slander." Before the words even left my mouth, a pungent liquid was splashed towards my face. I instinctively turned sideways to avoid it. The concrete floor immediately corroded, forming a pit. Looking up, I saw a middle school-aged boy holding a glass bottle, his face full of venom, splashing acid for fun. "Do you want to send yourself to juvenile detention?" I lunged forward, covering the distance in a few strides, and grabbed the boy's wrist. He tried to break free, but I held on tightly. After all, this was attempted murder. Perhaps seeing the terrifying look on my face, the boy suddenly burst into loud sobs. The surrounding people immediately glared at me, as if I had committed some heinous crime. Just as I thought, he's an abuser, not even sparing a little boy. "Everyone, let's protect him." Someone in the crowd started inciting others. These fans had been so deeply brainwashed by Victoria Sterling, I couldn't help but sneer. I almost got disfigured by acid, and that's what I deserve. Avoiding it is somehow my fault. My gaze cut like a knife as I scanned this group of ignorant people, who couldn't distinguish right from wrong. It was absolutely ridiculous. The crowd, intimidated by my gaze, involuntarily stepped back, and I had already dialed 911. The police arrived quickly and took the minor suspect away for investigation. This swift and decisive action made the bystanders turn pale, relieved they hadn't gone too far earlier. I looked at them mockingly. "Still want to cause trouble? Want to experience what it's like to be locked up?" These words were like a clap of thunder, scaring everyone into scattering like startled birds. I tidied my clothes and headed straight for the hospital. Victoria Sterling was currently live streaming on her phone, tearfully accusing me of domestic violence, and repeatedly claiming that I had caused her to lose the right to be a mother. When she saw me appear, she was so startled she nearly dropped her phone. She stared at me in horror, as if seeing a nightmare. I chuckled softly as I glanced at the livestream screen. The comment section was already flooded with angry netizens. They wished they could jump out of the screen and hit me. I calmly sat in front of the camera, completely unfazed by the insults. What are you doing here?" Victoria Sterling's voice trembled. Seeing her cowering like this, where was her usual arrogance and domineering manner? Victoria Sterling, subdued like this, gave me an indescribable sense of satisfaction. I smiled politely at the camera. "Don't worry, everyone. Let me show you something interesting." Victoria Sterling looked as if she was facing a formidable enemy, both terrified and confused. I clicked open the video from the thermal spa. It was filmed by the people who came to beat up the other woman. Victoria Sterling and Kyle Miller were sprawled on a large rock. Like two burger buns stacked together, they were being brutally beaten by a group of women, shameless, messing around in a thermal spa, and filming it. Go on, keep filming. Damn, isn't this woman a minor influencer? And this man isn't her husband? Quick, Quick, record it and send it to her husband. This cheap slut is cheating. Actually, I had received videos from the older women while waiting for the surgery. Victoria Sterling's face was now ashen, and she violently slapped my phone away. Instead of getting angry, I smiled, directly grabbed her phone, and gripping her wrist, walked towards the adjacent hospital room. Did everyone enjoy what you just saw? I'll take you to see the male actor. I heavily emphasized the words male actor. Victoria Sterling screamed loudly, trying to struggle free and escape. But it was too late. Isn't that Ethan Chern? Where's the hard liquor I asked for? Why haven't you bought it yet? As soon as Kyle Miller saw me, he immediately put on an arrogant display, looking every bit like a dog's master, exactly like the Sterling family father and daughter. I am truly sorry. I am really short on cash. I put on a pitiful act. Victoria Sterling tried to warn Kyle Miller, but I subtly stopped her. How could I let such a good show be revealed prematurely? Kyle Miller looked at me contemptuously. What? No one lent you money even after Victoria told you to borrow some. Do you want to sell your blood? I bit back a smile, my face a picture of grievance. You know that Victoria Sterling manages all the family money. I can't even pay back loans, and selling blood would affect my work. Victoria Sterling finally couldn't hold back anymore. Kyle Miller, are you an idiot? Can't you tell Ethan Chern is trying to trick you into talking? She shrieked. Only then did Kyle Miller realize, and his face instantly turned ashen. But it was too late. I pulled the shattered bottle of hard liquor from my bag, and placed it on the nightstand. I am sorry. The liquor I worked so hard to borrow was just broken, I said pitifully, then suddenly smashed the hard liquor bottle onto the floor again. Now I really can't afford a new one. Victoria Sterling's face was as ugly as if she'd swallowed a fly, while Kyle Miller was dumbfounded. He had never seen me look so utterly unhinged. Before he could even react, I bowed deeply as if taking a curtain call, and swiftly exited the hospital room. Returning to Victoria Sterling's hospital room, I reopened the livestream on her phone, watching the comment section erupt into a heated argument. I smiled slightly. Do you all think I am acting? I admit there was an element of performance just now, but their reactions couldn't be faked, could they? Having said that, I ignored them. I unhurriedly took out the evidence I had long prepared, scanning over each piece with the camera. Victoria Sterling was a minor influencer, wasn't she? Perfect to leverage her popularity. I slowly recounted everything that had happened over the years. First, a stack of medical reports, documenting every single punch and kick Victoria Sterling and Arthur Sterling had inflicted on me. These scars were the best witness, and I had been preparing for this day for a long time. Then came the bank statements and pay stubs. All my salary went into Victoria Sterling's account, and I only received a 300 yuan allowance each month. How many times had I begged her for some money to use, only to be dismissed with cold words? And the transfer records from her to Kyle Miller were shocking. I went to great lengths to investigate all of this. The livestream chat gradually quieted down, but that wasn't enough. I then played the recording of my conversation with Arthur Sterling, and the video of the forced confession from moments ago, proving that Arthur Sterling was the murderer, and my father had been wrongly accused. All this news has been handed over to the police. I believe they will clear my father's name. I had just learned that Arthur Sterling was sent to the operating room after Victoria Sterling knocked him unconscious with a glass, but I would never let him off the hook just like that. No sooner had I finished speaking than Victoria Sterling burst in, cold sweat beading on her forehead. Ethan Chern, you ungrateful wretch. She lunged at me hysterically. The Sterling family raised you for so many years. Even if we weren't good to you later, you wouldn't be where you are today without my dad's care. I watched her hysterics with indifference. My father's workers' compensation, your family embezzled it, didn't you? My family's properties, all of them except the old house, were taken by you, weren't they? My salary, all of it was controlled by you, wasn't it? I grew up living under their rule, doing the hardest labor, and was forced to sleep in a storage room in winter. Have you forgotten all that? I interrogated her word by word, years of grievance finally exploding. Victoria Sterling's face turned ashen. She wanted to argue but had no words. These were undeniable facts. The hospital room fell silent. After a long while, Victoria Sterling broke down crying. I sneered. She was just worried about her future. The comment section began apologizing for their previous prejudices. Watching the screen filled with apologies, I remained silent, mourning for the bullied self I once was. I want a divorce. I uttered these words in front of the livestream camera, and Victoria Sterling immediately panicked. She tugged at my clothes, desperately clinging on for the redevelopment compensation she was about to get. Divorce. Dream on. You'll never get rid of me in this lifetime. Ethan Churn, you'll be my dog until you die. You'll never break free from your leash. I scoffed. I couldn't believe she was still daydreaming at this point. If he unwilling to resolve this peacefully, then I'll see you in court. I said indifferently, this divorce, I am determined to get, and I won't give them a single cent of this money. As I turned to leave, the onlookers dared not say another word. I let out a long breath, as if shedding years of nightmare. My phone rang. It was Sophia Miller calling. She was Kyle Miller's wife, and she had asked me long ago if I wanted to conspire with her. It seemed she had seen my determination for revenge and was inviting me again. She arranged to meet me at a cafe. As soon as I sat down, she slid a stack of documents across the table. These are Kyle Miller and Victoria Sterling's financial transactions over the years. Take a look. I flipped through them and immediately gasped. Victoria Sterling had transferred hundreds of thousands to Kyle Miller, and Kyle Miller had actually embezzled over $1 million from his workplace. Sophia Miller and I exchanged a look, both remaining silent. Kyle Miller is very good at deceiving women. He's been clinging to me, refusing to divorce. So I need your help. She looked at me earnestly. Let's work together. Letting them be together is the best revenge against them. I no longer hesitated and handed her the evidence I had collected as well. The more evidence, the greater our chances of winning the case. We were both making final preparations for this divorce battle. It wasn't until the day the court announced its verdict that we truly breathed a sigh of relief. Victoria Sterling and Kyle Miller were ordered to repay their debts, and the truth from back then was finally revealed. Arthur Sterling, fresh out of surgery, was sent to prison. Sophia Miller and I finally resumed peaceful lives. Our relationship grew closer during this period. Even as we embarked on new lives, we didn't exit each other's worlds. I thought the nightmare was over, but one evening after work, I encountered an unforeseen disaster. A ragged man suddenly rushed out and gripped my throat. Before I could even react, I couldn't breathe. That viciousness, who else could it be but Kyle Miller? Let go, I struggled to say. He laughed maniacally. Let go. Why would I let go? Victoria Sterling and I truly loved each other. You were the third party. If you and Sophia Miller hadn't ganged up to ruin me, how would I have lost my job? Now my job is gone. My wife has left, and I can't even have children. It's all your fault. If you just die, everything will go back to normal. Die. He cursed and cried, his grip tightening. I struggled with all my might, but couldn't move at all. My vision went black, and my consciousness began to fade. My ears buzzed, and I felt like I was about to pass out, in a daze. I thought it was a nightmare. Suddenly, the pressure on my neck vanished. I fell to the ground and saw Kyle Miller lying in a pool of blood. Sophia Miller stood behind him, a broken beer bottle in her hand. Her face was ghostly pale with fright. She dropped the bottle and rushed towards me. Are you okay? I waved my hand, still shaken, but largely unharmed. Seeing the blood gushing from the wound on the back of Kyle Miller's head, I sighed. Call an ambulance. He's really lost his mind. Sophia Miller nodded in agreement, her face filled with lingering fear. We called an ambulance and watched as he was taken away. The trouble wasn't over yet. Late that night, Victoria Sterling appeared downstairs from my apartment building. She was even more disheveled than Kyle Miller, her clothes disarrayed, her face haggard. As soon as I opened the door, she dropped to her knees with a thud. Ethan Churn, please give me another chance. Can we remarry? Like a drowning person grasping at a last straw, she desperately clung to my leg, refusing to let go. I coldly stared at this woman who had once been so arrogant. We're already divorced. Your father's blood debt for killing my dad hasn't been settled, and you still want to remarry. What the Sterling family has done is enough to keep you in prison for a lifetime. Are you trying to find a patron to continue exploiting me? I scoffed, never imagining she could be so shameless. Just then, a pungent, sweet scent wafted over. I vigilantly looked at Victoria Sterling. I saw a vicious glint in her eyes. You forced me to do this. I couldn't stand Kyle Miller's abuse anymore, so I had no choice but to come back to you. Compared to that lunatic, it's much easier to deal with. I wanted to struggle, but my body felt limp, and my consciousness gradually blurred. I fell heavily to the ground. When I woke up, Victoria Sterling was holding me, her clothes disheveled, and crying, "Don't hit me. I know I was wrong. We're divorced now. You can't treat me like this." I was completely bewildered, and looked around. To my shock, I saw a phone pointed directly at us. Live streaming. She was putting on a show for the online viewers again. What on earth are you playing at? I roared. She immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. I am so sorry, husband. Please don't bully me anymore. I am too ashamed to face anyone like this. I was utterly confused, but Victoria Sterling clearly wouldn't tell the truth. It was from the live chat that I understood what was happening. Victoria Sterling was claiming I had imprisoned her at home, abused her, and even forced myself on her. I was shaking with rage. Bullshit. How could I do something like that? But it was clear she was deliberately trying to frame me if I couldn't find evidence. This huge accusation would be pinned on me. Watching her smug expression, I suddenly remembered something. I looked up and saw the security camera in the corner. Right? I had installed cameras specifically to guard against Victoria Sterling and Kyle Miller. I rushed to the computer and pulled up the footage. I was terrified I'd see myself doing something utterly depraved, but the recording proved I was completely innocent. After I was drugged, I lay there like a log. Victoria Sterling didn't even have a chance to touch me. I immediately projected the video onto the live stream. Look closely, everyone. See who's really setting up whom. After this scandal, Victoria Sterling's reputation was utterly ruined. Used to spending money like water, she suddenly became destitute. Arthur Sterling and Kyle Miller hounded her for money like two debt collectors all day long. One wanted her to get him out of prison. The other wanted her to make money to buy him hard liquor. A month later, Sophia Miller and I ran into her at the real estate sales office. When we went to look at new homes, Victoria Sterling was kneeling at Kyle Miller's feet, and he was gripping her chin, forcing her to apologize. I looked away, seeing it as her reaping what she had sown, but when she saw me, hope suddenly ignited in her eyes, and she tried to appeal to me for help. Kyle Miller noticed her gaze and flew into a rage. He slapped her hard across the face. Bitch, you still dare to look at him? You mine now. I watched dispassionately. This was karma. Let's go. Don't get involved. Sophia Miller gently took my hand. I nodded, then turned, and left. Life always moves forward. A week later, I was at home preparing to propose to Sophia Miller. I held the roses, kneeling on one knee. Sophia Miller, will you be my wife? Suddenly, there was a commotion outside, as if an accident had occurred. A moment later, someone yelled out. Someone jumped from the 20th floor. Sophia Miller's face changed, and she looked out the window with concern. My leg had gone numb from kneeling. After a long moment, she turned her head and smiled sweetly. I will. My hands were trembling with excitement, and it took me a moment to finally slide the ring onto her finger. We happily finished our candlelit dinner. That night, I learned from the news that the person who jumped was Victoria Sterling. No one was willing to buy or rent property from Kyle Miller anymore. Kyle Miller, who had injured his lower body in the thermal spa accident, became extremely abusive. He would beat and kick Victoria Sterling every day, abusing her to vent his frustrations. Victoria Sterling couldn't bear it anymore, and killed Kyle Miller. Knowing she couldn't escape the law, she chose to jump, and Arthur Sterling, upon hearing the news, suffered a stroke in prison and was left half dead. I quietly turned off the television, a mix of emotions swirling within me. The once high and mighty Sterling family, it turned out, was so utterly broken. Sophia Miller held onto my arm. It's all over now. From now on, no one will bully you again. They all brought their fates upon themselves. I nodded and kissed her forehead. Don't talk about unhappy things. Today is our special day. It's late. We should rest. I lifted her into my arms. This present happiness is what matters most. The next morning, I made breakfast and waited for Sophia Miller to wake up. And there was even more incredible news. The compensation from the family property redevelopment had been deposited. When I saw Sophia Miller come into the dining room, I said happily, "Wife, let's go look at new homes."